Just being honest. Nothing but the truth, yeah. Nothing but the truth, yeah. Honesty, CJ, honesty. CJ, honesty. CJ, honesty. CJ, honesty. Just being honest. Nothing but the truth.
Welcome to another episode of
CJ Honesty.
And today is part 2 of talking about betrayal trauma with Joshua Shea.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have Joshua Shea who is here with us. He's been giving us a lot of information on this topic that's hopefully is useful to you and that you can even help yourself or help someone else.
Definitely. So let's start off with this first question and continuing on from the last episode. So Joshua, with betrayal trauma, what about with friends who betray you? How should somebody handle that situation? Like, per se, somebody's in school and you thought they was your friend, but then they go to another group of people that is bullying you, and instead of, just for example, instead of staying with you being a friend, they go with the people who are bullying you.
Yeah. It's a multi-tiered process. And the first thing that you have to do is feel your feelings. You can, despite the fact that this really didn't have to do with you, you do feel betrayed. You do feel like in your situation, they chose somebody else or a group of people over you. They became mean instead of being nice with you. It's going to affect you. You need to allow it to affect you. Do not repress your emotions. If it's going to make you cry, cry. If it's going to make you scream, scream. Have your genuine emotional reaction. That's going to help things. Now, after you have that emotional reaction, usually the next thing that happens is that you get mad or that you look for blame. And a lot of people, unfortunately, look in the mirror and blame themselves and wonder, was I not cool enough for this person? Did my friend group not do something for them? Am I boring? Am I not funny? Am I not smart? Did this person go hang out with people who were prettier than me? Why did this person leave me? What is it about me that is the problem? And and that can get these people, get you worked up, get you mad, and get you even mad at yourself. And what you have to do is try to take a breath, try to stop that kind of thinking and take a step back and recognize that this was a decision that this person made on their own. This was not you. This was not anything that you pushed them to do. If they were a friend and you did something wrong, they would tell you. If you were a real friend and this kind of stuff came up, you could get together and talk to them about the fact that they're hanging with this other group. They're now treating you like you're nothing. And what you have to be able to do once you accept the fact that it is not you, and it's never you in these cases, and that's what's important to understand. That doesn't mean that you can't, emotionally have a reaction, but you are never to blame when it comes to betrayal. If you light somebody's house on fire and kill all their pets in the process, and they get mad at you, they have a right to be mad at you. That's not betrayal trauma. That's you causing a problem. But with true betrayal trauma, you are a victim, but you cannot get stuck in that victim mentality. Some of the people who I deal with, especially middle-aged women, a little bit older women who are, maybe between 40 and 60, who have been married, have kids, have really settled into a life, and then find that their husband or their life partner has been cheating on them for a period of time, maybe with multiple people. Those are the ones who really get into that space of blaming themselves or even blaming the other person. But what they do is they wallow. And that's something that you are entitled to wallow. You're entitled to feel bad, but at some point you have to stop. At some point you have to tell yourself, I am going to get through this. I am going to get through to the other side. And this is also a great opportunity at that point to say, can I go get some other help to get through this? Because if you're not able to get through on your own, that's why you go get help. You know, if you have a broken leg, you see a doctor because they'll help you along. You have diabetes or a heart condition, you go see, you know, a cardiologist who helps you with your heart issues. Well, if you're having problems with things that are going on in your head, you go see a mental health professional, be it a therapist, a counselor, a coach, you know, a trusted advisor, whoever it may be, to get that help. Because what they're going to do is they're going to open up your world a little bit and your mind a little bit and say, okay, well, obviously you're angry with this person, you've had it with this person, but why are you having such a strong reaction where it may not be a strong reaction of someone else? Is there something else going on here? Let's mine the past a little bit. Well, in a lot of cases, when you're talking about cheating, you're talking about somebody who already had a major fear of abandonment. Somebody who maybe when they were a kid, their dad left or their mom left. Maybe they had another relationship when they were young that somebody just up and left on them, and that's left a mark on them that they never really worked through. And that's a lot of times, you know, the best place for a therapist or coach is when you're just stuck in that wallowing, questioning phase, and you can't get through to the next phase, which really is beginning to build your new life, beginning to recognize that you can move on, that your reality is different, and that's okay. You can adapt to it. We're very adaptable creatures. You can adapt to this new reality, and you can go on and you can live an even better life. But if you get caught in those first three steps where you are very emotional, where you are very upset, or where you are just, you know, wallowing and can't move forward with your life, those are really the three places to get help. Because, you know, trained professionals like myself, we can get you to those fourth and fifth steps and help you live a better life.
Well, I can totally relate to the what you said about friends, just going to a different group of friends. I personally experience usually I experience people not like, the worst thing to me is when someone just completely stopped talking to you, and that's what I've experienced, where they just like they stop calling or texting, and I'm like, what's going on here? What did I do? So I can
ghosted.
ghosted. We call it ghosted.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm like that is, and to me, I'm like, what did I do? So you did mention like you always look at yourself. Oh, but usually it's what they're going through. It's not always. It's not about you. So yeah, I don't know what that's about. I always say
Imagine
kids are a season.
that you've got three kids and you love them to death. And when you go to breakfast with your friend, she hasn't told you that she's having fertility issues. They're going through treatment. Nothing's working. She's been keeping this as a big secret. And you talk about your kids because you're a parent. That's what we do. And she decides on her own, well, I'm not going to talk to my friend for a while because it just makes me feel sad when I talk and all she does is talk about her kids. Well, I'm just going to ghost her and I'm just going to remove myself from this situation. And that is a perfect example of you don't know what's going on with the other person. Now, in most cases, if you are truly good friends, you can call and say, hey, what's going on? Now, in some cases, you know, hopefully they'll explain what's going on, but in other, they'll just turn their back on you. And that is a betrayal of what you considered to be the bond of friendship.
Well, yeah, I guess it wasn't. I don't know what it was. Like at the time, the person was there for me, but we worked together, and then they just ghosted me. And the thing is, not like I didn't reach out. So
yeah, and that's tough. And it's very hard to say, okay, well, let me do the math here. They liked being with me, then they didn't like being with me. Something must be wrong with me. And that makes sense. And that's the thing, is that it makes a lot of sense on paper that this is the way of thinking, but it's always something to do with them. It's their choice. They're making that choice for whatever their reason is. There is nothing different about you. There is nothing wrong with you. This person has something else going on. What makes somebody cheat in a relationship? Who knows? What makes somebody lie to their children and then pull the rug out from under them? Who knows? And the tricky thing is that the exact same thing can happen to you and can happen to me. We can be twin brothers, we can be twin sisters, and we react to it differently. My brother was at that babysitter's house when I was a kid. He was 2 years younger. I specifically remember seeing certain things happen to him. He doesn't remember this stuff at all because he was I think he was out of there at 4 years old, and I was there till I was 6 or 7, and he doesn't remember this stuff. So he has a very different take on it. He didn't carry great betrayal with him because just none of his mind remembers any of it, conscious or subconscious. I think he's very lucky that way. And that's the other thing that, when I was early on dealing with this, was like, geez, if he doesn't remember some of this stuff, or the stuff he does remember, if he doesn't have such a strong reaction as I do, maybe I'm a little bit crazy here. Maybe I'm making this stuff up. What's wrong with me? And it's one of these self-perpetuating things where you're constantly asking, what's wrong with me? When nothing is wrong with you, you are just dealing with the reactions to what's happening around you. And depending on if it's new, depending on if you're young, there are times where we cannot process things correctly. And we can either get help, or we can try to push it all the way down and move on with our lives. And that's when you eventually get into trouble, because that 4, 5, 6-year-old boy who had that terrible stuff happen to him, well, it didn't blow up until I was 37.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. It's a shame too that children go through that. Yeah. That hits me to my heart. It's like, I don't
Well,
know.
and thankfully, we know more about this now. When I started seeing a therapist actually before I even stopped with my addictions, and I had to go on my own when I was like 22 or 23, finally not living with my parents, because my parents would have just looked at me like something was really wrong if I ever said I wanted to go to a therapist. But when my son was 14, 15 years old, he went through a bout of depression, and that I wasn't able to help him with. So we got him into therapy, and he actually got on an antidepressant for a short amount of time. And he still sees this therapist once a month. And I just think to myself, thank God we're in a place now in society where people are taking mental health more seriously. I mean, unfortunately, all the budget makers in Washington are those old white guy types who think that if you can't see the boo-boo, it's not there. But I think that, among those of us who are younger, among those of us who maybe are more open-minded, we understand just how important mental health is these days. And I think that's only going to be a big gain in society over, when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'm big on mental health. I go to therapy myself. So, it's a big thing. Everyone should go at least.
I still do. I still do, because it's so important. And now that I'm the coach and I'm sitting on the other side of things, I recognize just how truly important this is for people, that I'm here rooting for them. I'm here trying to help them. But at the end of our session, much like at the end of our podcast, I'm going to hit the button and we're done. And then you go live your life and you try to take what we talked about, but I'm not there every day. I know, and I can tell you some truths, and I can see some of your blind spots, and we can talk about them. And it's such a great relationship that, I don't think exists anywhere else. That, I'm always telling everybody, you should have a therapist, you should have a coach. You need somebody outside of your immediate circle who you can reflect upon what's happening in that circle, especially when things aren't going well.
That makes me think about, and you can help me out with this, Joshua. I'm not sure if this is related to betrayal trauma. I know this has to do with mental health, as far as there's a basketball player out there now by the name of Kyrie Irving. He's been taking leaves of absence, without saying anything. He's not there for 3-4 games at a time. And it comes down to, I believe, basically him saying he's taking care of things at home and everything. And that makes me think that he has that ability, but he's also making literally over 30 million a year. And whether he's there or not, he's gonna get paid. Whereas there are people who are in this pandemic who does not have that choice to whether if the job is stressing them out or something at home is stressing them out, a relationship or a betrayal, they can't just take off for work, because jobs don't allow you to take off work just because you say, you're having a depressing moment or
Yeah,
something, unless you
or they
say,
make you feel bad for taking
Right.
off. Do
Right.
that.
yeah, even if you use your PTO time, they still jobs will be like, oh, why are you taking? Do you have to take all of this PTO time? Can't you just take 2 or 3 days here? The only time I've really heard of anybody really being free from their job for about a month is when if their child passes away or somebody
Yeah.
major passes away. Other than that, I've never
Yeah.
heard of nobody having a leave of
You
absence.
can actually do that. I did. My doctor.
You guys have frozen on me. I
Yeah.
don't know if you can hear me. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So what I was saying was that with the mental health being taking off of work, how should somebody deal with that nowadays? Because I think Christina was saying that she was able to get a doctor's note.
Yeah, I was able, but I didn't do that.
But
But
as
yeah.
far as
Well,
me, I've never heard of that before.
I think it also depends on where you work, who the people are, what what their beliefs are. I'm guessing if you work for a giant conservative corporation of thousands, you're just a tiny spoke in the wheel. You don't matter. So you're gonna follow whatever is in the HR handbook. You work at maybe you work at a little bakery with 4 people and you're all close friends. It's probably something where you can share more. But what the important thing is that you get help. A job is just a job, whether you're making $30 million as a basketball player or whether you're collecting bottles on the beach to cash in to get money. It doesn't matter, because without your mental health, you can't do anything. And with it's similar to physical health. A basketball player breaks their leg, nobody asks questions about why he's out. You get it. Well, what happens when your brain breaks or your mind breaks or your emotions break? You do need to heal. Now, I about 2, maybe 3 years ago now, I went through a depressive episode of about 6-8 weeks, and I have bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed when I was 20, so I've been on medication for it for about 25 years. Very rarely ever rears its ugly head, but about 3 years ago it did for a month and a half. And I've worked from home for years and years, and at that point I was doing a lot of writing for other people, being hired as a ghostwriter. And I had to tell my clients, I literally wrote to them and said, hey, listen, I'm going through something right now. If you need your work immediately, I will find somebody to do it and get it done. If you can wait, hopefully only a few weeks, I'm going through something right now, but I cannot sit here and work at this point. Now, thankfully, I worked for myself, so I could do this, but I felt so guilty until my therapist, and I've had the same therapist for about 8 years now, until she told me, she's like, Josh, if you broke both of your hands, you would have to tell these people your hands were broken, and you could not write their stories or write their books for 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it took. Well, your hands aren't broken, but part of your mind that does that work is broken. So you just need to sit there and relax. And it was actually, of all the people in the world, Jim Carrey, the actor, has my favorite quote about being depressed. And he said the solution for being depressed is right there if you say the word slow enough: deep rest. And that's essentially what you need. You just need to rest. You just need to get through it. And I wish there was a pill. I wish there was a faster way. You know, sometimes talking about things makes things faster, and then sometimes it doesn't. And you have to sit with it for a while. And I was out of action for 6 weeks. I was sitting in front of the TV for 6 weeks. Can't tell you what I watched. Can't tell you what happened. I was just bleh. And I saw my therapist, 3 times a week then, where I only see her about once every 2 weeks now. So when you're having issues, you need to see somebody more is my point. But this stuff will come up on you. This stuff will hit you, but you need to know. And now is a great time when you're feeling okay to plan for something like this. If you ever have a mental break, like I said, if you break both legs, what are you going to do for work? Well, okay, what happens when something snaps in your mind and you need some time? You should plan for that as well. And I think that as long as people like you and I keep having these conversations and normalizing it, it will be something that people are allowed to leave work for. I mean, when I first entered the workforce back in 93, 94, there was no Family Medical Leave Act. Women were basically given 4 or 5 weeks off, depending on where they worked. Husbands might get 2 days off right around the time of birth, and that was it. It took Congress to pass the Family Medical Leave Act before it became illegal for employers to treat you like that. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened with mental health yet, but like I said, as long as we keep doing our parts, we keep talking about it, we keep reminding people it's real. And then just with time, as you cycle these old guys out of Washington and you get younger people in there who have been exposed to more, who were smarter, who weren't raised by people who grew up during the Depression, you're hopefully gonna see a better world.
Yeah. So one last thing, and we maybe got about 6 minutes left. But I want to end it with this because a lot of people are dealing with this. I've had the privilege of doing the Lyft and Uber rides, and I have great conversations with people, and I've also talked to some other people in my life, and I've come into contact with people who have shared with me. I guess I'm just a person that people share things with, Christina as well. But they share with me that they lost their husband, they lost their wife. And then in the COVID era that we're in now, people have lost a lot of people out there, not even because of COVID, but just it seems like a lot of people have been passing away lately.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that feeling of not having that person there anymore?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to understand there is a difference between traditional grieving and betrayal trauma.
Okay.
Now death does cause betrayal trauma in some people. Like, that's how some people immediately almost cope. Somebody dies and, well, you promised me that you would take me to see the penguins in Antarctica someday, and you died and you didn't do it. People sometimes use that almost as a coping mechanism of sorts. And that's the way they almost, they blame the person for dying. Like children, I mentioned in our first episode, they blame their parents for divorce. They may not recognize the greatest thing their parents could do for them is to separate, and they will have a much healthier childhood. But, that's the thing also with the mind that's challenging, is that you don't always have the correct perception of what's going on. You don't always know what the best thing is. You don't always know the best way to handle things. And what I suggest is, if you're feeling like this, if you are, whether it's grieving, whether it's betrayal trauma, if it's depression, sadness, whatever, talk to somebody. That's how we get through this stuff. Now, maybe you will need some sort of deeper therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what helped me get beyond my addictions. For a lot of people, simple dialectical behavioral therapy exercises work. And that's really getting you to center yourself, to be in the moment, to bring it back to the now. And sometimes it's just simple talk therapy. Let's sit here and let's work through this. It's different for each person, and that's what makes it a little bit challenging. And that's what a lot of those people who want to say there's no such thing as, mental health issues, or that people are making this up, or they're being crybabies. It's because no two people respond the same. Yet, if I cut your legs off, you're going to fall to the ground, you're going to bleed, we have to cauterize it. It's kind of the same from injury to injury like that. But when you're talking about, the millions of miles of neurons and whatnot that are going on in your head that can circle the equator, 30, 40 times, you're talking about, one of probably God's greatest creation is the human brain. And for us as men and women to think that we will ever understand it fully, that's just hubris. But even worse than that, I think it's one of these things where you almost have to say, this is such an awesome creation, we will never understand it fully, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have compassion. Like a lot of people who just want to say, nah, that's not real, we don't even need to think about it. It's obviously real, and find some help, because the people who are trained know how to help different people in different ways. And usually when I have my first or second session with people, it's just about figuring out, how is this person going to react the best? What technique do I need to use to get them through this?
Wow. So we appreciate you coming on our podcast and just giving us like a lot of information and guidance on how we can deal with our betrayal, trauma. And where the 3 books that what are the title of the 3 books you have, and where can people find it, and where can people find you?
All right. Well, the 3 books. The first one is a memoir that's called The Addiction Nobody Would Talk About. That's essentially about my last 4 or 5 years being an alcoholic and porn addict. The second one I mentioned during the first episode, geared towards the partners of porn addicts. That's called He's a Porn Addict, Now What? And then my final book, which came out last year, was called Porn and the Pandemic, How 3 months in 2020 Changed Everything. And all of those are available on Amazon, on barnesandnoble.com. There's a few bookstores in this world with them. There's a lot of libraries that have it. And you can also go to my website, and there are links to it. My website is paddictrecovery.com. And on there, I write a couple articles a week. There's a lot of resources. I post all of the interviews that I've given in the past. And then there is a section that gets into what I do for coaching, what it costs, the process, and whatnot. So if you need anything, or if you need to get in touch with me, paddictrecovery.com is a great place. And then Twitter, Instagram, every place else that you want to find me, it's paddictrecovery. Pretty simple to remember.
Got you. And we'll post all of that in the description on YouTube. You can find him there. Please go out and support him, not just as a pitch sale, but because you need it, because it's good to read those books.
We all need it.
Yeah. So this has been another episode of
CJ Honesty.
Peace. God bless.
Just being honest, nothing but the truth.